Welcome, everybody, to episode 70 of VR Roundtable. My name is Anthony, and today I am joined by Gary and Chris. We are not going to have Steve aboard the show today, but it's just going to be me, Gary, and Chris, and we're going to go ahead and get into some news stories. But first, let me check in with Gary. Gary, how is it going over there? What's any news going on?
Oh, not too much. There is something. So I had my van stolen yesterday. Last night really.
Great.
So I'm really annoyed about that. So I've not had a good day today. I've been on the phone a lot to insurance companies and the place where I rent it from and all this kind of stuff. So it's not been a great day, Anthony. But thanks for bringing that up anyway. Cheers.
Wow, crime in the UK. Who would have guessed?
Yeah.
Chris, what about you? Any stolen skateboards?
No, not yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I'm good. Just been working on production. We have our first digital game starting to shape up, and it's due on Tuesday, so I'm hustling to try to get that done.
What kind of game is it, Chris?
It's a head-to-head race game through a randomly generated maze in a post-apocalyptic world where you're trying to beat the other player, and like it's kind of like a Mad Max theme, so it's cool.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty sweet. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get into our news? We don't have a ton of stuff today, but we'll go ahead and run through these news stories, and then we'll get into some game discussion right after that. So the first story that I have is Oculus Go. We did get some leaked images of the Oculus Go Dev Kit this week. A couple of different images have hit. And the most interesting thing probably about all of this is the fact that this Oculus Go Dev Kit, it looks very much like retail packaging, really. And I think that's the thing that kind of jumped out at us. Gary, I'm sure you saw this Oculus Go pictures. What did you think when you first saw it?
Yeah, it does look like retail packaging. It really does. And the thing that was interesting to me is at the bottom, you've got all of these apps that are listed. And one of them in particular stuck out to me, the Ultra Wings, because I didn't realise this was coming out on the Oculus Go, or if it's out on Gear VR, I wasn't aware of that. So the fact that it's coming out on this is really, really encouraging, because this is exactly the kind of content that I want from Oculus Go. I've said it before, with this headset, if I get one, I'm not really going to be somebody that will just sit down and watch Netflix in it. I don't really want to use it for that kind of thing, although I can perfectly appreciate why some people will want to do that. For me, I want it to be like a casual gaming kind of thing, where I sit in my living room. If my wife wants to watch TV for half an hour on something that I'm not interested in, I could just put on the Oculus Go and play with like a gamepad and play Ultra Wings or whatever. I think it would be great. So that's the kind of thing I want. So I'm optimistic about the kind of content that's going to be on this, and that's sort of encouraging really for me.
Yeah, Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does look promising. I don't really agree with like the choice of things they're highlighting. I feel like they could highlight like Dead and Buried or some other like more full games like that, but I guess they really are trying to advertise it as like a content watching thing as well, so it makes sense. But yeah, it definitely looks like it's ready to go. They just have to kind of ramp up production, but like looks ready to me.
You know, when these pictures first leaked and there was a lot of talk on the Oculus subreddit about this, one of the things that I noticed in some of the different threads was everybody started talking about the 32 gig version, and that's not enough storage space. And it kind of got into this discussion about apparently there isn't any kind of like SD card slot anywhere on there. And so a lot of people were kind of up in arms about that, because they're kind of saying, well, what is the deal with this 32 gig version if there's no way to add any additional memory? And one of the things I was kind of thinking, and Chris, I'm going to send this to you, is do you guys remember way back to the days of when the Xbox 360 first came out? Now, this is way back in 2005. I can't believe it's that long ago that this happened. But way back when the Xbox 360 first came out, you had the core version that didn't have a hard drive, and then you had, the regular Xbox 360. And back then, everybody was calling the core version, they were calling it the Tard Pack, obviously not politically correct there with that phrase, but some people were kind of wondering, is this 32 gig version of the Oculus Go, could this end up being that equivalent where it's almost like they're putting it out there? Maybe this is the 199 version, but they're really kind of maybe almost subliminally steering people over to the 64 gig version. Any thoughts about that, Chris?
I just hope that they don't have an extreme upgrade charge to get 64 gigs. Like, I hope it's like $20 extra or something like that, because really storage shouldn't be that expensive, especially nowadays. But yeah, I mean, we can only hope that they do the right thing and have it be not that much more expensive. If it's like $50 more expensive, I feel like that's way too much. But yeah, I wish it was 64 gigs out of the box and then they had 128 gig or something, because this is also, this is really limiting it towards kind of content streaming and rather than gaming, which I think isn't what people are expecting. But yeah, I wish it had an SD card slot too. Like, come on, you can add that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because a lot of the comments that I see from people, and I'm talking specifically about people that are on sort of the Oculus subreddit already, they talk about how this is, because it's not really going to even approach what the Oculus Rift can do, they're going to use this primarily as a media sort of source of entertainment in VR, so Netflix and that kind of stuff. And I don't feel like that. I want to use it as like a casual gaming kind of thing that I can just play. So, but yeah, I think you're right, Chris, in terms of the costings, because this 32 gigabyte one, presumably that will be the $199 model that we've all heard about. And then I think they're going to be charging $50, which is probably too much for the 64 gigabytes. But I think that's what they will be charging. I think it's just how it's going to work out. And it's unfortunate. But the other thing is, John Carmack, I think in one of his tweets, he mentioned how it's not got an SD card, but it could possibly, and he wasn't 100% sure on this in this tweet, but he said it's possibly got a USB connection in there, so you can put a USB stick. That's not going to be great in terms of form factor, having a USB stick sticking out of it somewhere, but at least it's something, I suppose.
Yeah, you might be able to run, say, a small USB wire. And then, because I mean, where is the USB stick going to actually be sticking out? So yeah, you would have to. But then for that to work, they would have to enable that to work as a storage, right? Like Oculus, like they could block that if they wanted to, where you couldn't use that as storage.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like an odd thing, because if they were going to allow external storage, they'd just make it an SD card. It's an older kind of storage, but the form factor would work better for this kind of device. So if they were going to allow that, I would think that's what they would do. It seems like they're aiming, I think people have said this for a long time, how they're aiming for the kind of Apple market. They want to be the ultra polished kind of streamlined kind of device, not necessarily the highest quality in terms of specs or anything like that, but as long as it's high quality, streamlined, and people can immediately get on board with it. It's easy, the interface is easy, and Apple do this a lot with their memory storage as well, so maybe they're just focusing on that kind of stuff.
All right, and the next story we're going to go ahead and get into is the HTC Vive Pro apparently is being targeted towards prosumers, and it's going to be more expensive than the consumer version of the Vive. And so this comes from a Road to VR story. I believe it's Anthony Vitillo, who is a VR AR expert. He interviewed HTC Vive China president Alvin Wang Graylin. And in this discussion, that's where they kind of got into this topic of prosumers and maybe more of a premium device. And this comes on top of the fact that we did have that tested video. And in the tested video, they were at HTC's offices, I believe, in San Francisco. And they were kind of told there as well that this is kind of more of a premium device. Now, the interesting thing about this is I actually covered this story on my other show, and there were some comments in the comments saying, wait a minute, this isn't, because I was saying, look, this doesn't look like it's appeared to, like they're targeting actual hardcore gamers. But then people came in, and in my comments, they said, But look at the video that they released. The video that they released, they're showing Fallout 4 in the video. So isn't this targeted towards gamers? So what's going on here? Why don't I kick it over to Chris? Is this going to be much more expensive than anybody thought it was?
I guess it sounds like it'll be more than 350, so that rumor is probably dead, which sucks for me because I said I was gonna get one, and now if it's like 500 or 600, who knows? But I think we always knew that it would be like targeted at the prosumer market because that's not like saying it's targeted at the enterprise market or anything. They're still saying like consumers will be able to buy this, and like for prosumers that kind of just means hardcore gamers in some way. They're just not really saying the gamers part. But yeah, it's a little concerning for me, especially since I said I would get one. I hope it ends up being like 350 or 400 still, but you never know. Like I hope they release this price info soon. Like it's got to be one of these weeks or something, or at least this month, you'd hope. But yeah, definitely the prosumer tag, I feel like we always kind of knew from the beginning. So just the price being more expensive could be bad. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Gary, what do you think? Because I mean, right now the normal Vive is $599.99, right? So they're saying this is going to be more expensive than the regular consumer version. So do you think this a la carte headset that is going to be sold by itself, it will have the link cable and the link box, but do you think it could be priced maybe the same price, $599? You can choose. Do you want the full package? It comes with the old Vive, or do you want to get just the headset a la carte for $599? Is it crazy for me to suggest such a thing?
I think it's entirely possible based on what they've been saying. However, I don't think it will go that high. I predict sort of it'll be around maybe $500 for the headset, $450, $500 maybe. The thing is, when they're talking about this, and I think we mentioned it briefly last week, how we were saying some of the language that they were using with this device when it was first announced, that Daniel O'Brien was saying things like, this is for our most demanding customers, the industry kind of, the enterprise kind of customers, and also the early adopters, the most demanding consumers that want this high-end device. And again, I think he was making a point of saying this is not going to be a cheap thing, and I think it's better for him to do that rather than do what something like Palmer Luckey did, for example, with the famous ballpark comment a long time ago. So I think it's probably better they do those kinds of things to make sure that expectations are being matched when this device is released. Chris, I think you're right. I think this 350 rumour is now dead in the water. I think it's going to be at least 400, and like I say, I think closer to 500 for this thing.
Yeah, it's I don't know, Gary, do you have a picture of Alvin Wang Graylin that's up on there at all, or anything like that?
No, sorry, not at the moment. No.
Okay, because it's funny. This is like a side topic, but like I was doing my episode and then I had to find a picture of this Alvin Wang Graylin guy, and dude is probably the most debonair HTC Vive spokesperson I ever seen. He looks like he could be in like a James Bond movie or something. It was really quite funny. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our next story. Next story that we have is Super Lucky's Tale. Could there be a VR version of Super Lucky's Tale? And this comes from a tweet that recently, you know what? I do not have the tweet on hand. Does anybody else have that tweet? You can
I can
read it. Okay.
Yeah, so someone said, why have you forsaken us, Lucky? #VR. And they replied, we can't promise anything, but we feel hopeful about Lucky's chances of returning to VR someday.
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting because, I mean, I don't think they're going to come out with this tweet for no apparent reason. So they responded to this other tweet with this idea. And this is something that goes back really for me. It goes back to the launch of the Windows mixed reality headsets. This was last, I believe, October 15th. And I remember back at that time, I had always kind of speculated. I thought that when Microsoft was coming out with this Windows mixed reality platform, I thought it was going to be much more of a platform and that they were going to try to make a bigger deal out of things. And for me, I kind of guesstimated, Super Lucky's Tale VR. This is going to be an exclusive on the Microsoft Store. So if you want to play this, maybe the only way to do it would be to get yourself an Acer or Lenovo or Dell or whatever headset to be able to do that. And I thought maybe Forza 7 could be, there could be a VR version of Forza 7. We didn't see any of this at all. And here we are now, we're in February 2018. We do get this tweet here. When I think about this possibility, there's a lot of different scenarios here. Microsoft could have an exclusive for both a flat and VR version. So we could see this on the mixed reality headsets. But another possibility is, and we got to start thinking about this as we get further into 2018, but what about Xbox? I think it's kind of, a lot of people feel that Xbox might get VR this year. And if they get VR this year, that would mean Microsoft would have to show something this E3. And Super Lucky, they're going to need games. They're going to need to have a handful of games that they can announce with it. So Super Lucky's Tale could be a possibility there. And then there's even an additional possibility. Maybe Microsoft has this exclusivity window for Super Lucky's Tale, but not VR. And maybe when this exclusivity runs out, who knows? We could see Super Lucky's Tale VR on PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, like all on the same day. Like it could be completely exclusive. So let me go ahead and kick it over there to Gary. What do you think is going on with Super Lucky's Tale VR?
Well, yeah, I think it's the connotations of this tweet that are more interesting than the tweet itself, because Lucky's Tale was a great game, the original, and then when it came out on the Xbox One X as like a launch title, it was sort of, I don't think it did anything crazy that people were raving about it or anything like that. But the fact that they're doing this could point to so many things. You're right, Anthony, what you mentioned there, it could be any one of these possibilities. I don't think that there's anything to really take from this other than the fact that they are developing a VR game, and it could come to any of the platforms. I don't necessarily think it means anything other than that, because I don't know if they're still held to any exclusivity at all with any of this kind of stuff. So to me, because the game, it's not a huge game, originally it had this whole aspect that this was like the Oculus mascot, this was like the Oculus Rift mascot. It really doesn't have that anymore. So I think this is an IP can go anywhere now, and it really won't mean too much. But talking about the Xbox One X and VR, I think we will hear something at some point this year where they are going with that. And that will be interesting because a lot of people will say, because Microsoft have these Windows mixed reality headsets, that they will probably just make the Xbox One X compatible with those. I'm not too sure about that, and the longer we go on, I'm getting less sure of that. I think if they're going to do that, I think they're going to have some kind of bespoke Xbox VR headset. And I think Phil Spencer has mentioned numerous times that he wants to get into VR on the Xbox when we've got these wireless solutions, and they are sort of the norm. He doesn't want wires on the Xbox VR. So I think it will come later on in the year, maybe an announcement towards the end of the year for a launch for Xbox VR in 2019. I think that's, to me, it seems a little bit more realistic. I don't think they'll be pushing the Windows mixed reality on Xbox. I think that's a separate market for them, and they see it differently to the gaming market.
Gary, since you went ahead and brought this up and we're going into this Xbox idea, now this is a good topic. We could go into this real quick. That's interesting what you bring up there, because Phil Spencer, a number of different times, he's talked about the living room, and he's talked about wires being strewn all over the place, and he has talked about wireless. And so it really seemed like if Xbox was going to get a VR headset, that they would have to get a wireless headset. But here we are, we're in February of 2018. Is there a wireless VR headset that is available? No, there isn't. And so do we really think that the add-on VR headset for Xbox coming out this year is going to be wireless? Probably not. They're probably not going to be able to do that quickly. So then it kind of boils down to, are they going to give Sony another year of this VR market all to themselves and still not have a VR headset this Christmas? Can they afford to do that? Chris, what do you think? Or do you think can they afford to do that, or because how are they going to fit wireless in this year and make it affordable?
Yeah, there's no way they can include wireless. Like WiGig is finally starting to come out from Intel, but there's no way that would be cheap for sure. You're right. It's such a weird position to be in because, like, I think if you really poll VR people, not that many people care about the VR being wireless. Like, even on the PSVR, like, even though it could be a little bit of a hassle, I don't think it's in Xbox's best interest to just be like, oh, no one wants VR because there's a wire, because that's definitely not true. Like, they're clearly even selling their own like mixed reality headsets that have wires. So I don't really see the point to that. I feel like consumers can decide if they want to buy it or not, but it's definitely going to have to be its own headset like that Xbox makes. They don't really have that many third-party things anymore. Like they used to have, like, you could get, wheels and stuff from different companies, but really it's mainly everything is Xbox now. Just like how they used to have controller mods, all these custom controllers, and now there's the Xbox Elite controller that Microsoft makes themselves. So it'll definitely have to be like a Microsoft exclusive thing. Yeah, it'll be really interesting. They just have to throw something out there, I think, at this point, because Sony has such a high lead, and like there's no games even being like developed or that have been announced for VR, whereas Sony is like, we have all these games all the time coming out. So I think they're already really losing so bad that I don't even know how to catch up, to be honest.
Yeah, I wonder if they just, I mean, well, on one hand, you can say, yeah, Sony's had this market all to themselves, but are they making billions off of this? No, it's still a very small market. But if you let Sony have another Christmas, I mean, that is because there are Xbox One gamers that would love to jump on VR, but they've always been Xbox One people, and they want a VR headset that has some type of Xbox logo on it. They are Xbox people through and through. But some of these people, man, they're going to start to think, man, maybe I will go grab a PSVR, because I can't wait any longer. And Microsoft is gambling that they can afford to just keep waiting. I don't know if they're going to be able to deal with it.
I think that Microsoft really do need to. They must have some plans in place now at this point, because they've seemed to have been, in terms of the Xbox, they seem to be out of the game for so long. Not just in terms of VR, but in sort of exclusives and just getting the console to where it needs to be. The Xbox One had a very bad launch, and it sort of went downhill from there in many ways. So they're playing catch up with Sony with the PlayStation anyway. And it feels very much to me, when you look at Phil Spencer in interviews, seems very relaxed, very casual about it. We've got things rumbling along in the background, and you're going to see those eventually. That's the kind of impression I get from him. So I feel like they're biding their time, and they're going to bring something out. And again, I think we're going to see an announcement for VR on the Xbox this year with a release in 2019. And that could potentially be a release of a wireless HMD. I mean, obviously, to me, that still feels maybe a little bit early, but if they are pushing for that, maybe they can get to that kind of thing. And if they were to do that, I don't think Sony would be ready to release a PSVR 2 in that early. So they could potentially sort of scoop up some of the other VR fans that are waiting to jump on board with this stuff, where they're waiting for a wireless headset. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and I think the Xbox have to do something this year. We need some announcements this year.
It's the question of, like, Sony's going to be long or heading towards Gen 2, whereas Xbox doesn't even have a Gen 1 out. I feel like it's better to have hardware and iterate on it than just be having everything behind the scenes, not letting anybody try it, and then just like releasing something and it might not even be up to par to where all the Gen 2 stuff is. Like, it's really important to kind of release something and get feedback so you can improve the product, Like, that's what HTC seems to be doing with the Vive Pro, so.
Yeah, this topic is pretty complicated. I mean, it could almost deserve its own show, trying to figure out what Microsoft is doing. But let's go ahead and jump into the next story we have. So we heard about this game Transference. Now, this is coming from Spectravision and Ubisoft. This is the Elijah Woods company, Spectravision. a number of Hollywood luminaries kind of all got together, and they basically saw that we're having this VR AR thing, that is happening behind the scenes, and we're heading towards this VR AR future. And Elijah Woods, relatively forward looking, he's been in the video game scene for quite a while. In fact, I think if you go back to the actual announcement of the original Xbox that was done on MTV, Elijah Woods was actually on that show, just coming off of like Lord of the Rings and stuff. That was a long, long time ago. But they've been working on this game Transference. But the interesting thing that we heard about this week is that if you go to the Steam page for this game, and I don't know if it's still the case, but this was the case earlier this week, it seemed as though any reference to virtual reality was basically wiped off this Steam page. And so some people are wondering, A, is this game VR at all anymore? And B, or maybe could this game be canceled altogether, or what's going on here? Is this going to be like a flat and VR? Is it not VR anymore at all? Could the game be canceled? Or is this just like some random editing of a Steam page, and it's much ado about nothing? I'll go ahead and kick it over to Chris. What do you think about this?
It's so weird that there's really no mention of VR. I was like looking at it, and there's nothing. It's really concerning, I guess. But on the Ubisoft website, it still says, platforms PSVR, Oculus Rift, Vive, and then it is coming out on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. So it sounds like their plan originally was for it to come out just on like everything, with a focus on kind of having it in VR as well. But I don't know. I'm not gonna jump on and say that it's canceled for VR just yet, just because they haven't updated their own website about it. It could just be a weird Steam page edit or something. But I mean, really, the even like the logo of the game is someone with a VR headset. If they release this without VR support, I think that's just going to be dumb of them, and people are going to be upset about it. Like every VR gamer is going to be like, what's going on? Because Ubisoft is really good with VR games. Like they've had a bunch in the past, and they've been relatively successful, like on a small scale. But I mean, they've always been into VR, and so this would just be. It'd be so weird for them to do. Yeah, I don't believe it yet. If there's more evidence, I might change my mind. But currently, I don't see it.
Gary, what do you think?
This is weird to me because the trailer, when it was first released, like at E3, when we first saw that trailer, it was all about VR. You had the people within the trailer actually wearing VR headsets, and it seemed to be focused. It was in the VR segment as well that Sony were doing. So everything seemed to be VR focused on this game. So it seems really odd that it's no longer referencing any kind of VR on the Steam page. But, I don't know what's going on with it. It's difficult to say. I think we've just got to wait and see. I'm sure that we'll be getting some announcements. I don't know exactly when this had any sort of release date. I don't think we got any kind of release date or even a release year for this game. So I guess we've just got to be patient, really.
They did talk about spring 2018. Like when they first had the trailer for this game, they always kind of talked about spring 2018. But we've only ever seen that one trailer, and there really hasn't been additional information. So I think, if anything, I think this game probably will end up delayed later this year. And then maybe as we get close to E3, we'll start getting like a new updated trailer. We'll find out more about it. But yeah, it's probably much ado about nothing, but we probably should just keep our eyes on it anyway. Okay, so the last major news story we wanted to get into before we get into some game discussion is there is this topic that is kind of going on the sidelines of gaming, really PC gaming, really, and that is this idea of cryptocurrency. So is all this cryptocurrency mining, is this going to have real life effects on the VR gaming industry? And so a lot of people have been thinking about this, postulating this. We've seen the prices of GPUs. They're absolutely through the roof. It is unbelievable. Myself personally, I am looking to upgrade my GPU. I've been needing to upgrade my GPU for a long time. Chris, I think you're in this boat as well, right? And we missed the boat. We missed the boat so bad. Gary upgraded to a 1080 Ti probably at the last possible moment before all this stuff got out of control. And Gary, you were able to sell your 1070 for a good for a pretty good price, probably to maybe crypto miners, because they weren't going after the 1080i's way back then. Now they're going after anything. So Gary, I'll kick it over to you. Now, this is more of a side story, right? And it's not really like a mainstream thing, but when do you think this could affect regular VR gamers and actually have a detrimental effect for, say, the Oculus Rift and for the HTC Vive and for this PC VR gaming industry?
I think it's already affecting VR gamers for sure. Whether that has got to the point of where it's affecting sales for the Oculus Rift or the Vive, I'm not too sure about that. But it's we're hearing things from Nvidia as well, how they're trying to approach retailers now and saying don't sell to the crypto miners. They want to sell only to gamers. How they manage that is, it's almost impossible to manage it really, unless they're coming in and asking for 1080 Ti's or something like that. Then I think you can sort of make a judgment call. But yeah, I mean, it is disappointing because this cryptocurrency thing, it's sort of a phase, and I suppose once it's over with, you're going to get all of these cards that have been used 24/7, then appearing on the market. And how long are these cards going to last then? They've been sort of been used to death, they've been burnt out and this kind of stuff. They're probably still working just about, but then a lot of people that want to pick these cards up will be picking them up from cryptocurrency miners, and they probably won't last too long beyond that. And it's annoying that kind of stuff is, especially when people go into VR and they don't necessarily think about the extra equipment they need immediately. And when they do look into that and they see all of these prices for these cards, which are currently, they're double or even more than that in some cases, that will immediately turn you off. If you can pick up an Oculus Rift for $399 and then all of a sudden you have to pay over $1,000 for a graphics card beyond that, nobody's going to go for that. That's insane. So it's going to damage it eventually if it carries on for long enough. I don't think it will, and hopefully it won't, because it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem sustainable anyway. And if it's damaging VR, then it's probably best that it does go away.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think about this? Because I know you're in a similar boat. You've probably been thinking about upgrading for a while, but the sticker shock that you see when you try to price out some of these cards is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's insane. Like all the 1080 Ti's are like $1,000. It's nuts. Yeah, I was talking to my friends about upgrading one of their computers a few weeks ago, and we found like a pre-built Dell system that costs less than the graphics card that was in the system. So it's just ridiculous. Like, I guess, it seems like the best way to go is pre-built that have already existed, that already have the graphics cards in them, but no one wants to build pre-built PCs anymore. I can't do that now. My PC is already ready, and it's like all it needs is a new graphics card, and like you can't really buy them standalone anymore. So it's a mess. I'm real upset about it. It sounds like it's hard, like being NVIDIA or AMD, like you can't really do anything about having these miners other than trying to make a card that's only for mining or making some sort of miner only stuff. But I mean, until that happens, it's just like, it's crazy. I'm real upset. I think it definitely affects VR a lot.
There was something about that. Sorry, yeah. Chris, just on that point about the people creating cards specifically for mining. I think there was something. Samsung, was it?
Yeah, Samsung.
Yeah, they were creating a card specifically for this to combat this issue, which is great. If they can do that, sell those cards to the miners. That's fine. Miners can get the cards, and then gamers can get the cards that they want. I think that's probably the best way to go. Sorry to
the problem though is by the time they finally have whatever that chip is ready for the retail channel, then maybe the bubble will have already burst. I know Bitcoin is not what people are into, but Bitcoin did drop quite a bit just this last, just yesterday. I think it dropped considerably. The Wall Street was down yesterday. I don't really follow this stuff, but just happened to see it, and they said that Bitcoin dropped a lot. But I think it's Ethereum, and it's all these other ones that they're really doing it for. But yeah, and then you go to the pre-built. Like the pre-built is a pretty good idea because that's the way to get around this, because the crypto miners, they don't want to buy an entire PC. They just want the cards. If you see these videos of crypto miners doing this, and they just have like an empty room and just video cards strung everywhere. It's just absolutely insane. But the problem with the pre-built PCs is they typically will come with like a GTX 1060, and then if you want to upgrade to a 1070 or a 1080 or a 1080 Ti or whatever, you can do that for this additional price. But the problem is they don't really come like that. And because of this crazy price situation that's going on, if you do decide to do that step up, then it's this huge, gigantic inflation in the overall cost. So it does make it quite complicated. Okay, yeah. We do have a little bit of smaller news real quick. Just some quick things to touch on. There have been a number of updates for these Bethesda games. Skyrim has had some patches, Fallout 4 has had some patches, and Doom VFR has had some patches. Does anybody want to go into any of these patches? Anybody try any of them out or anything?
I'll just go through quickly some of the main highlights from some of these patches, because the Skyrim one had the walking speed and height of the character that you play. You can adjust those things now, so that's pretty good. A lot of people were asking for that kind of stuff. And in Fallout 4, the main one for a lot of people is the scopes. They've added scopes in this now, although I don't think it's been added in quite the way that a lot of people were hoping for. It's not like you can just bring the gun up and you're looking through the scope and you can still see the full world rendered around it or anything like that you can in some of these other games. It basically goes to a black screen with a circle in the middle, so you're looking through the scope in that way. I haven't tried it, so I'm not too clear on the specifics of that particular one, but I have tried the Fallout 4 patch in other ways, so you can adjust the world scale, and also there's certain bug fixes. There was a big issue on the Fallout 4 VR with the stars being rendered incorrectly, and you could do a sort of a simple config file edit which could adjust this, but now it's been added in to just the base game. And also VATs have been improved in Fallout 4 as well, so they were a little bit finicky before and you couldn't target things properly, but now it's a little bit better. And in Doom VFR, they've added smooth locomotion. And I believe, I haven't tried it again, but they've fixed this freezing bug that we spoke about when this game was first released. Whenever you play this game, sort of every few minutes, or when you're moving around in the action, I don't know exactly when it happened, but it happened randomly, seemingly for me. But the world would freeze for a second, and then when it would start moving again, everything would be very low resolution. They seem to have fixed this now as well, so that's all good. Unfortunately, it's still not really working too well on the Oculus Rift. There's still performance issues, juddering in that kind of stuff on Doom VFR. It's annoying because I did play through Doom VFR when I had my Vive, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great, but a lot of the criticism, Vive owners themselves had criticism of it, but Oculus Rift owners, I can perfectly understand them having criticism of Doom VFR because it really doesn't run very well in there at all. It's annoying because now I've only got an Oculus Rift, I can't play that game, and it's one of the games that I really have this. I just feel like a hankering to go back into Doom VFR every now and again. I can't do it at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, I heard some people were mentioning that this new patch for Doom VFR actually makes it even worse for Oculus. Like, you can kind of play it on Oculus Rift, but like this new patch kind of screwed that up and has made it even worse. I've been in this boat where I need a new video card to play Doom VFR, and the freaking crypto miners won't let me get a new video card, so I'm not even playing Doom VFR. But one other little news story we have before we get to the games is Sprint Vector did get a release date. It is going to release on February 8th, so I guess that's next week, right? That is going to be for the Rift and HTC Vive, and then February 13th for PlayStation VR. Now, we were in the closed beta for Sprint Vector. Gary or Chris, did either of you guys want to comment on, like, how much Sprint Vector did you play? Is this a game you're gonna try to buy right away, or are you kind of lukewarm on it, or what's your thoughts?
Hey Gary, you can talk about it. I never got the chance to play it since the beta, and I don't know if, or the closed beta. Is it still available for us to try, do you think, or it's probably closed
No,
now?
it's ended. It ended.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
But it's something I want to pick up day one, no question. Like, it sounds really fun based on how you guys have described it in the past episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played beyond the closed beta, and I did really enjoy it. I thought it was great. A few little problems with it initially, but nothing major. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it when it comes out. And you know, it really feels like this beta that they did was just sort of testing the servers and testing things, making sure that everything was running the way they wanted it to run. Once they found out that everybody was pretty pleased with it, and there weren't any big problems really in terms of bugs or anything like that, then they were ready to go for a launch, and that's really feels like what they've done on this.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is in the closed beta, they give you 3 tracks to try. And I liked all 3 of the tracks. The music is really good, incredibly colorful. But then when we found out about this, the actual release on February 8th, they announced, I believe there's 12 full tracks that 8 people can race in. And then there's also like another 9 challenge courses. So it's like a total of 21 courses. And because I was wondering before we heard this, I was like, well, how many tracks are they going to have? Because that kind of makes or breaks a game like this. And I think that's a pretty good number. I think that's pretty decent. We don't know what the price is. I'm guessing this is going to be somewhere like $29.99 on the low end, or $39.99 on the high end, or maybe $34 right in the middle. Somewhere right around there is what I would guess the price to be, but we don't know that yet, I don't think, right?
No, and I was thinking about this as well, because I caught your show, Anthony, on VR Game Rankings, where you were talking about Sprint Vector and possible prices for this, and I was thinking, you know, I really want it to be a little bit cheaper than what you're saying. I'm thinking maybe sort of £20, possibly $30 at the very most, really, for me. It's a good game, but it's very narrow in scope, and what it does very well, and a lot of people will enjoy it, but I think it needs to be priced correctly for it to really take off.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, but the game is pretty damn good though, man. They got a lot of tracks. Like when I was in there, I kind of feel like this is like a new VR franchise for Survios. You know, they got raw data, and I feel like this is another VR franchise. But you just never know, because like if the game comes out and if people don't resonate with it, you know, if they don't get that vibe with it, and it doesn't develop that early community in the beginning, then that's where things can just fall apart. So we'll have to see when it comes out on February 8th. Okay, so we can go ahead and jump into game discussion. Gary, you can go ahead and start it off. Any game you want to choose?
Well, yeah, let's talk about Cold Iron. I think we've all played Cold Iron, at least some of it anyway. So we did receive a key for this game, and I didn't know a lot about it. You can sort of watch the trailer and very quickly understand what this game is all about. It's a sort of quick draw kind of game, although I will say it sort of goes beyond those expectations a little bit. So the first round of this game you're playing through, it sets it up quite nicely in terms of like a revenge kind of narrative. So your father was killed by these gunmen, and the first part of the game you go into it looking for revenge for these gunmen. And it starts off in a very simple way, so it's exactly how you expect it to be. It will be just a quick draw game. You're against various enemies, and then you get to a boss fight, and you just have to be quick. You have to be quick and accurate in terms of shooting them. And the way this works is you're stood in front of these enemies, and then you'll hear the heartbeat, and your field of view will sort of narrow vertically as if you're sort of squinting your eyes, ready to take the shot. And then you'll hear this heartbeat going, and then a bell will ring. So as soon as that bell rings, that's your cue to then move your controller up from where it is on your holster, and then shoot the enemy. And if you do it quick enough, you'll win the round. And it's the amount of times you can do that to win the round, and then you go on to a boss fight. And really that's the first part of the game, and I sort of expected that to be pretty much it, and in many ways the game is that. However, it sort of plays with that kind of theme. So beyond that, you go into these various sort of more surreal settings, and you're fighting against these other enemies where there's slightly different mechanics in terms of shooting them. So instead of just shooting just one enemy, you've got this enemy that can appear in any one of 3 locations. And as the heartbeat throbs, you'll see these lights appear above these 3 locations, and then the bell will ring, and that's the location that it will appear in. So it's almost like a random. So it's stepping up the game a little bit. It took it in various different directions, and it went beyond where I thought it would. I think the game is okay. I enjoyed it for what it is, and it does what it does very well, but I don't know if I'll stick with it for too long, because it sort of still feels a little bit thin overall in terms of content. I don't want to be hard on it, because it does, if you go into this expecting a quick shot game, then this is it. This is the one to go for, and it does it really well.
Yeah, I tried. I didn't get as far as you did, Gary, but my first impressions of it was basically it's just like Dead and Buried with that quick draw mode, which I have played a lot of with my friends and stuff. I think for me it like lacks the kind of multiplayer aspect that I would like with a quick draw game. Like I'd like to be able to verse other people I know, which is what really Dead and Buried does already. For me, I had to lower the graphics to low on the 980, so I don't know if it looks better, but on mine it didn't look the best, unfortunately. But yeah, I didn't get to all these wacky parts with like these surreal moments and stuff, and that makes it sound definitely more interesting. But it really is a game based around this single mechanic, and like if you knew that going in, I didn't know that going in. I thought it would kind of be something more to it than that. But if you have that expectation, I think you would definitely like it. Right now did we say how much it is? Right now it's $18. I probably would pay 15 for it. I don't know. 18's a little bit much for me. I don't know how long the full game is though. I don't know if we know that yet.
I think there's 12 rounds, and yeah, it's currently on a discount for 10% discount. So it's usually £15.49 or $20, and it's currently down for $18 or £13.94. So yeah, I agree. I think in terms of price, it's probably priced slightly higher than I'd like to pay for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what I played of it, but not where I would say, oh, dude, you got to run out and buy Cold Iron. It's more of like, if you're really looking for that Wild West kind of thing, then yeah, it's pretty good. I like it better than High Noon for sure. I don't know if you guys have tried High Noon, but I did try High Noon, and I like this a lot better than High Noon. One of the interesting things about this, though, is like when you watch the trailer for this and when you look at a lot of screenshots, it looks very different from what I played very early in the game, but I haven't gotten as far as Gary, as far as you got. But the screenshots in the video make it look a lot more interesting. So I would like to get a little bit further in it before I gave any kind of a final take on it. But I would say it's kind of like, halfway decent, but nothing to run out and
yeah, there is more to it definitely than the first stage that you play through. It plays with those mechanics, although it's still based around the same kind of thing, and it sort of describes itself as kind of like a puzzle game, and I can understand that, because as you get further through the game, it plays with where these characters are going to appear and also what the characters do. So it's not just as straightforward as that, but I don't know if it varies the gameplay enough to really warrant this extra price, really.
Alrighty, Chris, do you want to jump into a game now?
Sure. We could talk about Kin if you all want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a platformer for Oculus Rift and Gear VR and potentially Oculus Go. We're not sure yet. But man, this is like the perfect Gear VR game for sure. And I've missed platformers for a while. Like there hasn't really been a good platformer release out there in a while. So just jumping into this, it's really refreshing to kind of have a game where everything's close up again. It reminded me of Lucky's Tale a lot, just kind of having the environment be so close to you and being able to like lean in and see the character and everything. In terms of controls, I thought it was super tight, like really good controls. I like the combat a lot. I'm not too good with the thumbstick trying to navigate this little character on these tiny jumps, and like I kept falling off, but that's more of just a skill-based problem for me. I didn't get too far into it, but this is the type of game that I love. Like I finished Lucky's Tale within like the first week of having my Rift, just because it's just so fun. Like you can sit down at your desk, you don't have to really do much. Like it's not like a full room scale or thing or anything like that. But you know, it's one of those games that doesn't need VR at all, really. Like it's VR adds to it for sure, and it sounds like it's only going to be released in VR, which is fine by me since I have a VR headset. But definitely, it's really cute. I like the art style a lot. Overall, I think it's a super good game. Yeah, I like it a lot. I need to go back and play more of it, but everything I played of it is really polished, which is nice to see.
Gary?
Yeah, so I played a very sort of probably about 20 minutes of this. You know, whenever we talk about these games, I often feel like I need to explain exactly how long I've played it, and some people won't want me to talk about it if I haven't played enough of it and that kind of stuff. And I don't know what to do with this because I haven't played very much of this game, but I still want to talk about it. It's really good, and I want to go back into it as well. The gameplay is actually very, very twitchy, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to. In terms of like the jumping, is got a very distinct arc. So when you're running along and then you press jump, it's sort of, it takes a while to get to grips with exactly how this character is going to jump. It's not floaty at all. But so I think it plays well once you get used to that kind of stuff. This is exactly the game I want in an Oculus Go. So when I pick up the Oculus Go, if I pick up an Oculus Go, this is exactly the game I want. Now, I assume this will be on the Oculus Go only because I think it's compatible with pretty much everything that's coming out on the Gear VR. And this is a game that's also out on the Gear VR. So I'm looking forward to playing this on my Oculus Go in the living room. Like I say, if I can just spend 30 minutes with this game every now and again, I think it would be great. But yeah, overall, it's pretty good. I enjoyed what I've played so far. I'm very early on, so whether I should have waited before talking about it or not, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's good.
Well, you can, I mean, you can only talk about what you've played, you know. So if you've sampled 20 minutes of it, you can give your take on that 20 minutes. You know, that's what you got to do. But for me, with this game, Ken, I really like, this is a great game. This is probably, I'm trying to think about VR games that have come out in this month of January. Well, we had The Inpatient, and then we had Primoridian, and this one, and I, man, I'm almost leaning towards Ken as being my favorite game of this entire month so far. Now, I'm not that far into it. I did get past the first boss, and I'm into the second level. And what I'll say about the game is, the way I would describe this game is like, if you've ever played Legos, right? And you built like a Lego city, okay? And you're sitting there and you have this little Lego city. Well, imagine that, but now imagine you have this little character that's running around. Okay, and you have little enemies that you're battling as well. And that's kind of the feel I get with this game. It's almost like, because when you do play this, you're going to sit down and you're going to probably play this with an Xbox controller. You can play it, I believe, with touch, but I think that would start to get tiring after a while. I've never tried it myself personally, but it's kind of easier when you're holding a normal controller. You have your two hands there, and it's kind of that normal situation, right? But the way it is when you're sitting down, it's almost as if there was an invisible table that was kind of coming up to your chest and kind of going out over there and out over that way. And the world that they display around you is very colorful, very beautiful. It has good music. These are the guys that did Surge and Apex, you know, so this is House of Secrets. Like, this is their first game type of thing. But the thing about it is, you have this little tiny character that's running around, and if there's any complaint I can have about this game is that sometimes your character will start off like way over there, and you're like, where is my character? You know, you're looking around, and then it's like, oh, there she is, and she's way over there. And there's no zooming. There's no like zooming into that area or zooming out, or there's no rotation or anything. The world is just there, and it's just existing around you, and then you just move your character wherever you need to move it. I kind of wish there maybe was a little bit of some type of zoom. I don't know if that would disorient you, though. They would have to do it in a certain way. Like Lucky's Tale, you kind of flow along, and it's such a gentle flow that it doesn't bother you too much. But I kind of wish there was either like a zooming or some type of rotation that they added to this game, but I don't know if that might break some of the puzzles that come later. But as you're going through this game, let me tell you, man, this is a real deal platforming game. This is kind of like a Super Meat Boy or something, with its zoomed out style. Not in terms of the difficulty at all, but this is very much a real platformer. There's a lot of puzzle elements, and the first boss, like you guys probably didn't get to the boss, but when you get to the first boss is very impressive. Really reminds me in a way of Megaton Rainfall. In Megaton Rainfall, you have these alien bosses that kind of move around, they morph, they transform, they do all these little different attacks that are really quite exciting and exhilarating in how they attack you. And this first boss does that very much. This game is just an orgasm of color, incredibly colorful, incredibly beautiful. You guys are talking about playing this on the Oculus Go. I think you might be selling this thing a bit short. This game is right there. Like if you're a fan of like Lucky's Tale and Chronos and Edge of Nowhere, and or on say PlayStation VR Bound and Robots Rescue and any of these third-person platformers, this game is right there. Like this game competes with all of that, like seriously. And I think it's deep and long too, because like I've watched videos of this game and they're showing levels that look completely different from the very first level that you're in. The very first level that you're in, it's kind of like this ocean is kind of there, and then there's like these little islands and you're kind of moving around the islands, and it's not the most graphically dynamic level, but you get past that first level and you're in this other level where there's lots of red and green and orange, and it's like really colorful, and it kind of has this like Minecrafty kind of look and a pixelated kind of look. And basically what I'm trying to say here is like if you have any kind of retro gamerish traits inside you where you can appreciate some of these games in VR. Like Chris, you said, I don't know that this really needs to be VR, but the thing is I remember back to PlayStation 3 when it had 3D, and you would play some games in 3D and like it would make the game look a little bit better. But and I was thinking, well, what is different from this and playing a game in 3D? The difference is this table is wrapping around me. This is solid. There's no ghosting. There's no flickering of the image. You're locked in. It is real 3D. I think there's a reason for games like this. Now, this isn't going to appeal to everybody. I got a buddy, Arrowin X, talk about him a lot. He's the exact type of gamer that would probably play this for 2 minutes and be like, what the hell is this? And this is one of these games, too, where I'll tell you, like the first 20 minutes I was playing this, I wasn't that into it. You got to actually stick with this game a little bit longer. But for $15, I can't give a better recommendation. Now, I don't know if it runs well in Revive, so I don't know as far as that. I don't know if it's eventually going to come to Steam or whatever, but I am incredibly impressed with this. I'm going to spend a lot more time with this one.
When I talk about it coming to Oculus Go, I'm really not saying that like in a disparaging way, because what I think is there are certain types of games that will work on Oculus Go. First person type games that aren't based in a sitting cockpit and that kind of stuff won't work in the Oculus Go, but third person platformers and cockpit based games really will, and this is why I think Kin will work especially well in the Oculus Go. But what you were saying about Super Meat Boy, I actually think you're bang on there, because this could potentially, I don't know how it progresses, but I don't find it especially easy, even at the beginning, but it is guiding you through, and you do get the impression it's guiding you into this world, and I think it could get very difficult. And the other similarity with Super Meat Boy is the fact that as soon as you die, you're immediately back at the start. There's no waiting around. You're back at the start of the level, and you can try again. And all of these things work so well in this game. I agree, it's a really, really good game, and I need to play more, and I'm interested to see how it will progress. The thing is, with games like this, the reason I want to play it on the Oculus Go or some kind of VR headset where I can just play it in my living room, I don't want to sit down and play this on my Oculus Rift in my office, and it's purely down to my own personal setup. This is how it is. I like the thought of playing this game just in short bursts in the living room when I've got a few minutes to spare.
I should try to play it on my Gear VR over this next
Yeah.
week and let you know how that is. Because I feel like just even the increased resolution of like playing it on mobile might make it even better, just having the characters be so small. I'm excited to try that.
It has a pretty clean look on the Oculus Rift, but in terms of a seated controller-based game, see the thing is, I understand exactly what you mean, and that does make perfect sense from the Oculus Go standpoint. It's better for cockpit seated type games, but for my situation, it's like, see, I don't play flat games anymore at all. Like I can't even tell you the last time I played a flat game. It was probably man, it was that Horizon Zero Dawn, just because I got a PlayStation 4 Pro and I wanted to see what 4K looked like, and that was whenever that came out. So it's been a long time since I played a flat game. But the thing is, it's like sometimes I'll go into my room where it's like, okay, I want to play VR now, but I don't feel like standing up and moving around and doing all, and so I kind of like having an occasional change of pace type game where I pull out my chair and I'm sitting down and I just get to kind of sit down and kick back and play a VR game. And that's what Ken worked out absolutely beautifully for me as far as that goes. But I understand your situation, Gary, is like you have more of a stand-up play situation there. You probably don't have a comfortable seated long-term situation there. So you're looking more to play those immersive first-person kind of games. But we can go on to the next one. Did you want to get into Primoridian a little bit, Gary?
Yeah, only quickly because we've mentioned this 2 weeks on the trot here, so I don't want to stick on this for too long. But we did have some comments on both of those videos where we spoke about our opinions of Primordian. In terms of people that really, really enjoyed this game, and they sort of they were constructive in their criticism about it, but they did say they didn't agree with it in terms of the combat comments that we made. And I went back, so I thought, okay, I'm going to go back into Primordian and really give it a go. The game is still fantastic, and overall, over the past 2 episodes, whenever we spoke about this, I think we've been very positive overall about the game. Although I do think we've probably stayed on the issues with combat probably unfairly too long. Because there's so much else to like about this game, and I think it's great. Everybody should really try this out. It's an early access game. It's incredibly polished. The graphics are incredible, and it feels good to play. It really does. I've played a little bit more now, and I've got through to the various parts now where there's a little bit more of spectacle. You've got various things that, like these huge set pieces where you've got like this huge log battering around kind of pendulum thing that sways, and that's really pretty interesting. I like that kind of spectacle in these types of games because the scale really makes a difference. And you're going through all these caves as well, and you can look up and see all of these gaps in the ceiling where you can look out into the world, and all of these things look great. It's all coming really back down to the graphics, I suppose. But in terms of combat, I still sort of stand by my criticism of the melee combat, but I can understand people not agreeing with that because it does feel good. It feels good to kill these enemies. I still have problems in terms of my individual movements feeling like they don't matter too much. I feel like what Steve was talking about last week in terms of this Wii problem where you can just sort of move your controllers out in front of you and just sort of swish them around, and you're having the same effect as if you take very careful movements, very careful swipes to the enemies. And this is really the big problem. And maybe I'm being overly critical on this because there's no good answer to this kind of stuff at the moment. I mentioned Vanishing Realms last week about how I felt that did a particularly good job of melee combat, but it does it in a different way. This game can't really do what Vanishing Realms does because Vanishing Realms is more of it's a slower pace kind of combat game. So you see this sword coming down and then you have the opportunity to block it, which works great. In this game, the enemies don't really respond in that kind of way. So it's a limitation of where we are, I think, more than having a particular criticism about the combat. There are other ways to kill the enemies. You've got these range weapons as well where you can pick up these guns. Again, the graphics on the guns just look fantastic, and that's quite satisfying.
Did you try the ranged weapons? Because see, the times that I've gotten in there, I don't know if I just passed up the ranged weapons or I got them and I didn't activate them or something, but I was curious, like, did you try using those, and what did you think about that?
Yeah, I did. Well, I made a point of trying them. I probably wouldn't be, but they do feel really, really good. I think they work very well, and they provide a good balance to the melee combat because you can kill these enemies in a variety of ways, but if you get bored of just playing it in one way, you can do these range weapons, and they do operate in a very different way. And the other thing in terms of weapons, you've got these very strange things. I mean, I've got to be honest, I've got no idea of what's going on in Primordian. I don't know the story or the narrative at all. You get glimpses into this, and it feels like it's going for this kind of Dark Souls almost kind of lore. You've got to pick up on little snippets of lore here and there to get really the story behind it. Maybe I'm just being a little bit stupid, I don't know. But the range weapons work great. And
What about the enemies though? Because like, so when you first start it, like you see the same predator looking enemies over and over again where
Yeah.
you're slashing them, you're decapitating them. I saw those guys. Did you get to a point where you saw like some completely different enemies? Like, did you end up battling the giant spider things at all or anything? Because I didn't get to that yet.
Yeah, I didn't know. I've not got to that point. Well, there is like a big spider thing, but you don't really battle that. That dies before you get to it, because you see one of the normal enemies, and this is very early on in the game. You see one of the normal enemies battling it, and then it sort of dies in front of you. So I don't know if you get to fight that later on. I've still not finished it, and well, let me just finish on the weapons quickly, because there are some interesting things that they're doing where you can pick up these bugs, and then you can sort of throw out these bugs, and they almost operate in a way like these in like side-scrolling shooters back in the day, where you can pick up these power-ups and you have these things that circle your spaceship as you're moving along, and they protect you, and then they'll go out and kill the enemies for you. These bugs operate in a very similar way to that, so you can throw these bugs out there and they'll go and attack the enemies for you. So it's doing some interesting things with weapons. What was the other point I was going to mention? Sorry, I've lost my train of thought now. But yeah, overall, I think it's great anyway. And in spite of some of the small criticisms I have with the melee combat, really there's not a lot of bad to say about it, and it progresses to the point of where after these 2 hours are up, because I've heard that this first part is 2 hours long, you're going to get more content in this game. The final thing, and I've just remembered what I was going to say, is the fact that the checkpoint system, so the saving system, is a little bit of a problem. I've played for over sort of an hour and a half, but I don't feel like I've progressed too far, because whenever you checkpoint, sometimes it sends you back. When you restart the game, you're sent back probably 10-15 minutes to a point where it feels like the game just hasn't saved properly. And this might be a bug because of early access. It feels like I'm replaying sections far longer than I expected to going back into this game. I felt like it should have saved it. This is a problem I have not just with this game, but quite a few games, where it doesn't make it clear where the checkpoints are. Because you'd think going into a new level or a new area, it would save a checkpoint. This game doesn't seem to do that, unless I've hit a bug and it's just sending me back further than it should.
I've had a similar problem. Like, what I keep trying to go back into this game because I want to see the range weapons. I want to see the other enemies. And when I go back in and I try to hit continue, it doesn't seem to do anything. So then I just start a new game, and now I'm starting a new game over, and it's going to take me another hour to get to the point wherever I finally get the range weapons.
Yeah, it's a similar issue. And I thought initially, because I didn't know if it was just a problem with like an update or something like that, where you updated it, and because it's early access, you've got to make some allowances because of that. You think it had a big update, so maybe it sort of reset the save game in this instance, but that's not the case when I've played through again, and it sends me back too far. It feels like it's sending me back way too far, and I'm playing through sections again and again. So yeah, I mean,
it is one guy did this game. I mean, he didn't do the music, but one developer, like, I mean, he's putting so many other teams to shame with these graphics and everything. Just incredible that one guy did that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have another early access game to talk about, is In Death. Now, I think I'm the only person that played this, but I'll give you guys a quick breakdown of it. So this is actually coming from Solfar Studios, which I might be mispronouncing that a little bit, but they're the team that did Everest VR. Now, this is an Icelandic developer, and basically, so this is like this roguelike archery kind of a game where you're in these medieval castles, and you're basically traveling through these medieval castles, and you're battling enemies. Now, man, there's some good things about this game. There's some bad things about this game. So it's the same price as like Cold Iron. It has it's $17.99 with the launch discount. Normal price $19.99. And when I'm in the game, like, the graphics are pretty damn good. The medieval castles look good. These guys did Everest VR. This is running in Unreal, and I think the graphics look great. But the thing that I've noticed, because I believe this is also like a procedurally generated game as well. So as you're going through these different like long corridors and these kind of gothic design cathedral type looking things, they all kind of just blend into each other after a while, and it all kind of ends up looking the same. I mean, you're going up different staircases, and things will kind of transform and move around, and it kind of looks cool like that. One of the downsides really is actually going up and down staircases, because what they do is when you're going up and down stairs, they bob you. They bob you up and down, and it's not good in VR. Don't do that. Devs, please don't do that. Because if you're going upstairs and you have smooth locomotion, I know it's kind of weird that you would just be smoothly going upstairs, but it's better to do that because it's not good the other way. But the enemies that you battle that I've seen in this game, they kind of repeat over and over again. I've only seen a handful of enemy types. The animations that they do are incredibly basic, and every one of them does the exact same animation. So it's almost like you're battling like 20 clones of this type of enemy, 20 clones of that type of enemy. They have Brookhaven zombies in there. I've mentioned this, of course. The zombies that are in Brookhaven Experiment, I guess, are just Unreal assets that Phosphor Studios purchased, and they did them in Brookhaven Experiment. That's the only place I ever saw them. So to me, those are Brookhaven zombies, and now I'm seeing them in this medieval archery game. So that kind of makes it a little bit weird. The bow mechanics, actually shooting your arrows and using your shield, is actually pretty good. It's actually done pretty well, and you do get a lot of different power-ups with the bows. You get these icicle bows that will freeze enemies. There's a number of different bows. You get like a triple shot that you get to shoot. And the way the locomotion works is you can either use a teleport locomotion, or you can use like go anywhere locomotion, where you combine the two. And so what you do is, if you want to teleport, there's a specific arrow that you like hit a button, you get this teleporting arrow, you shoot it to wherever you want to shoot it, and it teleports you there. But you can also go into the options and turn on smooth locomotion. But what I've noticed is you're going to have to use both, because there are certain areas that you can't just walk to, and you have to shoot your teleporting arrow to get over there.
Just quickly, Anthony, is there any stealth mechanic in there at all? Kind of like Thief or anything like that?
Not really, not that I've noticed. And one of the worst parts of this game, like this is the absolute worst, is you'll be going around, like if you actually do some stealth stuff, you're really going to notice this, because you'll go around a corner and you'll come to a room, and you'll literally see like 4 or 5 enemies that are turned around, and they're basically they're idling. They're waiting for you. And it's really bad when you see that, because it's like, oh, you turn around, it's like, oh, it's almost like they're actors, and the director hasn't said action yet. It's like they're just waiting for their turn. They're waiting for you to trigger them. So that was probably the worst thing about this game. Now, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying probably sounds really horrible, but there's something about this game that is just kind of, it's not that great, but like, I still find myself like, oh, I'm killing these in, I'm still going through the game. You know what I mean? It's like the game is not very good. The environments keep repeating over and over again. There's Brookhaven zombies. They're waiting for you. The animations are pretty lame, but I still it's kind of because it's like comfortable. It's like easy to go through, and I'm going through, and I understand the game. Like sometimes you get into these VR games, you don't really know what's going on. It might be a lot more extravagant, but you don't know what the hell's going on. This game is very simple, very basic. I know it. I know what the rules of this game are, and so I'm going through it, and I'm shooting these enemies and stuff, and there's I guess it's like a comfort food, or it's like a guilty pleasure is what I would say. So I don't want to throw this game into the dumpster fire and just say this is absolute garbage, because it's not quite that. But at the same time, I don't know that I could recommend this to anybody that is not really looking for another bow shooting game that they haven't had in a long time before. And you have to be very forgiving of what these developers delivered. Any questions?
No, not really. I've seen the videos of this, and it looks actually pretty good to me. But at the same time, it feels in some ways like we've played games like this before. And some of the things, is this an early access game? Do you know?
Yeah, it is early access, and supposedly they are going to continue to work on this game, and they're looking for feedback. My number one feedback, Soulfar Studios, please stop having these enemies just stand around waiting. That is not a good look. That would be my number one feedback.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing, because I mean, I guess as an early access game, that's one of the things that they can really improve on, and I'm sure they're working behind the scenes to improve AI. This is one of the big problems, I guess, with developing games. They need to get the AI correct, and if they've got it more or less manageable to put the game out there for people to enjoy now, they've done that. But hopefully, based on your criticism, hopefully they can sort of adjust that slightly and make it a little bit more realistic and enjoyable for users.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then I mean, we're almost out of here, but I'll just mention real quick Sparc. Now, of course, by the time you guys watch this, I guess the free weekend will be over, but hopefully a lot of Oculus Rift owners took the opportunity to try Sparc over this free weekend. Oculus has been doing this. This is almost like a news story, because Oculus has been doing this for a number of weeks. Raw Data had a free weekend, and then From Other Suns had a free weekend, and then last weekend it was Onward. And I've been trying all of these things. Like last weekend I tried Onward. This is a great idea. It's a good idea because Oculus, I guess, doesn't have a demo system. Like they don't have a way to just have normal demos. So to get around that, what they're doing is they're doing these free weekends. They give you the entire game. You get to play it for a certain period of time. Usually the game will be on sale, so you get a little bit of a discount if you like it. And that's the exact situation with Sparc right now. It is on sale for $14.99. The crazy thing is I looked this up. It is $29.99 on PlayStation VR, and it's $20 on Steam, but you can get it for $15 on Oculus during this free weekend. Now, I have the PlayStation VR version of Sparc. I like it a lot. I think it's a great game, but I always wondered how much better it could be on the Oculus Rift, just because when you're in Sparc, it's almost like you got Oculus touch controllers on. I mean, that's really what your character, like the way you're holding whatever it is you're holding, and you're grabbing the ball, and you have like a shield and all that. It is like made for Oculus Touch, and I kind of thought that when I was playing it on PSVR. Tried this free version. I've only played it a little bit today, but the graphics are clean, super crisp, look better than PSVR in my opinion, more clean, more crisp. The audio sounds great. It even sounds better. Like I went through this tutorial, and there's this lady that's talking to you, and it sounds crystal clear. Maybe I just need to play the PSVR version again to make sure that it's not actually the exact same thing, but it looks better. It seems to sound better. And there is something about this game, Sparc. I think this is a great buy for $15. I don't know how long it's going to stay on this sale, but there's something about the game. It's like it has a clean aesthetic that is almost Portal-like, is the only way I can describe it. Just very clean, clinical kind of looking game. And I just love the process. Like, you know what I'm into? I'm not even into playing people online, like the actual real game that you're supposed to play. I play these little challenge levels where you just grab the ball and you're throwing it at targets and you're trying to improve your time. And they have like a global leaderboard. And I can literally just do that for like 30 minutes. And it's a great exercise. It's actually really good exercise, and it's really fun. They do tell you, make sure clear out a space. You don't want to destroy your TV and all that type of thing. But I really like this. And for Chris and Gary, see, what you guys don't know is we're recording this on Saturday. So Chris and Gary, you guys have time. I say straight up, go ahead, download this for your Oculus account, give it a try, because I think you guys are going to be surprised by how good this plays.
Yeah, I did play it on the PSVR, and I went through the tutorial, which is quite an in-depth tutorial, although probably a little bit too long. It sort of explains things a little bit too much, I feel, in that tutorial. But I did enjoy it, and I went into a few after, Anthony, I spoke to you about it and you said this is a great game, and based on your recommendation I went into some of these sort of trials and things that you can do rather than the multiplayer, because I'm not really going to play this as a multiplayer game. It's good. I mean, it is a good game, so I'm interested to try this on the Oculus Rift as well to see what difference. Is there any, I think it's particularly interesting coming from PC VR, getting a PSVR and comparing certain games. You've got things like Raw Data, which were, when that was first released, that was really like the closest to a AAA game we had at that point, and it didn't perform particularly well. It is very taxing on systems, although it was optimized as time went on, and it runs a lot better now. And going over to PSVR, it was interesting to try that game to see how well it runs on a PSVR, and it runs great. It looks great, and this is, I guess, similar. Sparc looks pretty good on a PSVR to me. I can't really see how it can look too much better on an Oculus Rift, although maybe it does. However, the touch controllers can make a big difference, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's the move, because the Move controllers, like, you can play it on PSVR and it works pretty well, but every once in a while, you move your arm a certain way and then you lose your tracking a little bit, and that's the nice thing about playing it on a Rift or a Vive. You got that pinpoint accuracy on your tracking.
This will be good because I don't have a PSVR, so I can try it out. Yeah.
I would definitely try it out. I feel really bad for the PSVR crowd, though, because they got to pay $30. And then guess what? If you don't have PlayStation Plus, you don't get to play any online. Think about it. Oculus Rift players, we're paying half price, and the online just comes with it. That's one of the things about being a PlayStation VR player that is a little bit, it's a little bit shaky there. I think Sony needs to do a little bit more for PlayStation VR specific players to have a reason to have Plus, like more free games and stuff like that, because that kind of sucks. I mean, you got to pay double, and then you still got to have Plus to even do the multiplayer. But anyway, folks, that is going to go ahead and wrap it up basically for episode 70. Do we have any little last tidbits we need to get into, or anything else?
One thing I just wanted to mention, because I became aware the other day that anybody that isn't aware, who just listens to the audio podcast of this, we do have a YouTube channel as well. So you can go on it and check out this show on YouTube, youtube.com/VR Roundtable, and check it out there. Because generally we sort of, I guess we're speaking primarily to the YouTube crowd, and then we put this out on audio podcasts as well. But if you're coming from the other direction, you can check us out on YouTube, and leave a comment and like the video. That'd be great.
And for the podcast crowd, we need some reviews, guys. It's been a while. We need some more reviews, because what happens is the more reviews you get, then in like the general video game category, you get bumped up a little bit, and then people get to notice that there is this podcast that does exist. So we could use a few little more reviews if possible. I know it does take a little, it's not the easiest thing to do. I've told people to do this, and you actually have to go and download like the Apple podcast thing. You have to go through a process to do a review, and that makes it a little more difficult.
It's annoying, yeah. So we do appreciate it if you do go through those loopholes. And
Absolutely. So that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for episode 70 of VR Roundtable. And of course, we'll see everybody next week. And we should have Steve back as well next week. So we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Take it easy.
Bye.